I'm Kennedy O'Brien, and I was the mayor of Sayreville during Hurricane Sandy. I was in the Emergency Operations Center at the Sayreville Police Department. We knew it was coming the day before, and we were going house to house on Weber Avenue and other parts of town, warning the residents and warning the businesses that they were going to face a severe flood, and to secure their belongings and to evacuate. Well, a number of people didn't because they really had, it was an area that flooded with some frequency every several years. But this was the storm of storms that was coming, and no one had ever, this was a once in 500-year storm. I worked with Fran, and Fran was the leader of the residents of Weber Avenue. And, for someone that was thrown into it, she is a remarkable person, and she did a remarkable job. Sayreville is a remarkable town. The people are truly remarkable. One of the things that is so profound for me in Sayreville is when there's a challenge, there's an obstacle, nobody panics. Everybody gets together and you just move the obstacle. There's nothing that we can't do. One of the things that happened, one of the early phone calls I got was from Mayor McCormick in Woodbridge. And he said, "Mayor, how can I help?" And I said, "I need men and I need machines." And he sent me over 50-odd bulldozers, dump trucks, and the men to operate it. We had a very large developer, O'Neill Properties. Brian O'Neill Sr. called me and asked me the same question. "What do you need, Mayor?" "Men and machines." Again, another 50 machines. Sayreville had a state championship football team that year. And the president of the Touchdown Club, which is the parents of the football players, and they do things for the players. I got a call from the president, and he said, "How can we help?" And I said, "You can help the people in these areas." So the next day he had the varsity team, who are the state champions, the JV team, the freshman team, the cheerleaders, and the marching band. And they were all in the sections of town helping the residents clear out the destruction. Sayreville is a town of heroes. We had a town full of heroes that night and that day. We're down here at the St. Sands Carnival, but just a stone's throw away was where 18 feet of water came in on the Washington Canal and the Raritan River. And every employee of the borough is to be commended. There are some that, particularly those in leadership roles, like Captain Glenn Skarzinski, who did a lot with the emergency management. And then when John Bon Jovi came to do a film in his hometown, because he and Billy Joel, John came here. He came back to town. That's a true son of Sayreville, because he came here with a guy with a camera, no entourage. One of the places he went was the senior center, which was his old elementary school, and it was our center for the people that were displaced out of their home. And when he went in, he told his cameraman, he said, "You stay outside." That always chokes me up. And he went in.
He wasn't there for the publicity or the accolades.
He was in there for the people of Sayreville. He talked to, and I had hundreds in there. He talked to the kids. He talked to the parents one-on-one. A remarkable man. Never forgot where he came from. Our chief, John Zabrowski. And I think that was one of his first tests of fire as a chief. And needless to say, he more than rose to the occasion. So we live in a town full of hardworking people who, when called upon, answer the definition of hero.
Great.
Hi, I'm John Wisniewski. During Superstorm Sandy, I was the assemblyman for the 19th Legislative District, which includes Sayreville and 4 other communities. And like every other elected official, when there's a natural disaster, some major event in the community, you try to leverage the office you hold, the resources that you have an ability to bring to bear to assist the community and the people affected by the storm. There are 120 members of the legislature in New Jersey. Every one of them has a hometown. Sayreville's my hometown. I've lived in the community for 60 years now, and my family's been involved my entire life. My dad before me was councilman and council president, and I took on that tradition in being involved in local affairs. So when you drive around Sayreville in the aftermath of Sandy and you see the devastation, the homes that literally were destroyed, and not only that, the fact that there was no electricity for over a week. Folks, in many cases, didn't have food in their homes because the refrigerators were. You try to do everything you can to contact the state agencies that have an ability to bring resources to Sayreville. But not only that, I'm also a private attorney, and I contacted clients. One who ran a trucking company who could bring in generators, another that could provide equipment for a warehouse, and a third client who actually donated warehouse space. And the government can provide a lot more resources than private individuals, but in the first instance, it was really Sayreville. It was the Sayreville Office of Emergency Management and all of the individuals that are involved with that, the Sayreville Police Department, the First Aid Squad, the Fire Department, and local officials who all rolled up their sleeves to start the process in providing relief to all of those individuals, those families in Sayreville that were affected. We're sitting here in my law office. Weber Avenue is probably less than a mile away behind me, and that entire street, just an example of an entire neighborhood devastated. Those folks needed a place to live. They had no homes at the moment. They needed a place to eat. They needed a place to get clean. We've had so many people donating clothing. That's why we needed warehouse space. There were folks who needed clothing because their entire, whatever they had in their home was destroyed. The mayor, members of the governing body, other elected officials all banded together, got on the phone and made phone calls. Hey, can you provide this? Can you do this? Can you help us with that? And that really filled the gap between the date of the storm, the actual occurrence of the event, and when more robust aid came from state agencies and federal agencies. The feeling of community. Sayreville, is a community that is based on clay, right? Sayre Fisher Brick Company, for whom Sayreville is named, was a manufacturer of bricks based on the clay deposits that are found throughout Sayreville. And that really is a great metaphor for the community, because that community sticks together like clay, especially in tough times when there's a natural disaster. And that was really one of the impressive things to be able to observe firsthand, to be able to see neighbors helping neighbors, to be able to see elected officials, regardless of party affiliation, working together, knowing that there was an important problem to solve and everyone working to solve that problem. If you go to a store today to buy a generator, there's a bunch on the shelf, no big deal. You load it on your car and you take it home. Right after Sandy, I had to go to Lowe's in Woodbridge to get a generator. They had a line outside of people waiting for the shipment of generators, and they had police protection. It really was, an unsettling thing to see 2 police officers there supervising the sale of generators. But it really goes to underscore something that I think is really important, that there are so many things that we take for granted. You never wish for that kind of disaster. You never hope to see that kind of trouble for a community. But you do have to remark and say, it would be good if that kind of togetherness existed 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. We know it doesn't, but it's heartwarming to see that it can happen when it's really necessary. 10 years later is, my thoughts are that we still need to think about how we prepare for the next storm. It will come. The folks who lived on Weber Avenue endured 3 storms back to back in the space of 36 months. And we've been lucky over the last 10 years. There hasn't been anything quite as bad, but it's only a matter of time until that happens again. We need to be thinking about how we plan for the long term to make sure that we don't have neighborhoods that get totally inundated, that we're engaging in strategies to harden our infrastructure. So much of the community lost power because the location where transformer and switching stations were put where there was easily accessible land right by the water. Those transformers and switching stations got inundated. We need to raise them up. During Sandy, you could walk down that street and it was pitch black. You could see the outline of the hill of South River, and you could for a moment think about what the very first inhabitants of Sayreville looked at when they were walking through Sayreville on Washington Road, or what was Washington Road before it became that, and seeing the other side of the river and thinking about that's what our ancestors looked at. Centuries later, we need to make sure that our successors have a secure community to live in that's hardened against storms that we know will come, and that we're engaging in wise practices to make sure that we're not building in places that we know will eventually get inundated.
Okay, my name is Lisa Eicher. I was on the council, the Borough Council, during Superstorm Sandy. And my role, I was with the Recreation Department, and during the meetings with the police chiefs and the council down at police headquarters, we decided that through REC we were going to have some kind of relief center for the people that were affected by the hurricane or Superstorm Sandy. Jerry and I, he was very instrumental with me. We went from recreation to relief. And when the storm was happening, that's all I could think of was Fran being at the council meeting and talking about, because I had visited their houses during the last storm that we had, and I saw the damage that was done to her house and other houses along Weber Avenue. And that was in my mind when the storm was occurring, because I was thinking if it was that bad then, I'm sure it's just as bad or worse. Yeah, I remember Jen Herrick talking about, the 14-foot swell that came through and how they, swam to MacArthur Avenue. Every once in a while I think about, especially when the time comes in October, I think about, there's 2 things that always come to my mind that resonates. One is how social media and that platform helped with the Relief Center, because when the Relief Center was low on something, they would text me and they would ask me, and I would put it on Facebook. And before if I was out and about, if I was over in the Old Bridge section or somewhere, by the time I got back to the Relief Center, someone had already brought what I had asked we were low on. And I think that brought all of Sayreville together, present and past. One day I remember it was at OLV, we had, it was like a drop-off day. And I saw people that I hadn't seen since high school, and it was just like a reconnection, and it was like a giant class reunion. And it was amazing because the principals from the schools at the time were there emptying, trucks full of stuff. And it went from one small U-Haul that Matt Berardicelli brought to U-Hauls full of things that people were bringing, and the way everyone just came together everybody helped out, but everybody took on a role. There was one former Sayreville grad who was a therapist, so she worked with, every time someone was upset, she would talk to them. Then, there was organization. It was just the way it ran so smoothly, and there was no. It just happened.
Brought everybody together.
It really brought everybody together, and I think through the social media platform, it really brought them together. I don't think it would have been. I think people would have came to help, but I don't think. Because everybody was watching it, the football team, everybody gathered at the OLV Rec Center, and we dispersed to the Rec Center on Dolan Street because they were moving anything they could out of the homes, and it was it's like everybody all hands on deck, and everybody came. It was amazing. No matter how bad it is, you always find the good, and you always, as bad as any situation gets, you always see the good in people come out.
Right.
How did you get sucked into that process?
Well, this is our third storm.
Yeah, so, the devastation of Sandy actually started a couple of years prior to Sandy. And so in March of 2010, there was a nor'easter that came through, and we did not have any warning. Suddenly, within minutes, our street started to fill up with water, and it rushed into our homes. So we lost everything in our basement and our first floor. Following that storm, we tried to enlist the help of the town council to see what we could do to mitigate future flooding on our street. And under the guidance of Mayor O'Brien, we formed a Weber Avenue subcommittee. And we tried to take, I guess, a three-prong approach, if you will, by enlisting the help of the local government, our state government with Assemblymen Wisniewski and Coughlin, and then, of course, the federal government. The reason that we went through the federal government was because the Army Corps of Engineers was already working on a project to mitigate flooding from the Raritan River. Unfortunately, when we got the status of that project after the 2010 flood, we found out that the project conclusion was still about 10 or 15 years away. The borough engineer was hired to do a feasibility study, and the result of that was that we were trying to get a wall built that would offer enough protection to keep our street from flooding again, and would ultimately serve as the base for the Army Corps levee. So it wouldn't be a duplicate project, it would have just been like their base that they used. Unfortunately, in 2011, Hurricane Irene came along, and we suffered the same, if not worse, damage. And everything that we had just built, we lost again just 1 year later. I don't think it knocked us on our butts as much as it did give us the strength to continue to fight and fight even harder to save our neighborhood. We were losing our houses, and we knew with this second flood it was damaging the foundation, it was damaging the streets, there were sinkholes, there were pipes broken in the street that had to be repaired. So it wasn't just the physical part of what you could see, it was a lot of underground stuff that was making our street unsafe. I think the common strength of all of our neighbors to fight to save our neighborhood was turned into a collective sigh of a resolution that we needed to just get out because the entire street was no longer safe. Our foundations were collapsed. It wasn't just rebuilding our home with new sheetrock. We would have had to level it and start all over
That was
again.
safety.
Really came from the guidance and leadership of Mayor O'Brien, reaching out to Governor Christie. And so at that point, there was funding as a result through the federal government, but our primary connection was between Mayor O'Brien and Governor Christie.
Well, I don't think that we realized we were ground zero, right?
Right.
Because we were just trying to survive or do what we needed to do, and then people were just showing up and need this, bring it back. And we had no idea what was going on because I wasn't watching the television. I didn't have a television.
And so I think everyone was kind of on the same page that at this point, for our own safety, we needed to get out. We just needed to make sure that the majority of the homeowners all felt the same way. We did. It was a wonderful, wonderful street. Every neighbor, whether there was a 20-year difference in your age or not, everyone got along, looked out for each other, had barbecues together, attended our family events together. It was really a wonderful place to raise our children.
Well, it's still very painful, of course, but it's also very painful when you think that it could have been avoided. Like, had they worked with us in 2010, 2011, maybe it wouldn't have happened this way. The town was wonderful for us. I don't want to, dismiss that at all. From the sanitation department to the mayor's office to the council people, they were all, they came down, they tried to help and stuff like that. But I just feel like it could have been avoided.
Food,
churches and stuff. Yeah.
Churches,
They set up a distribution center, and honestly, I can still recall like it was yesterday, the day I walked through there. It was set up almost like Costco.
Yeah.
You don't, driving there, I thought to myself, like, I don't even need anything. What do I need? And then I got there and realized, like, we don't even have toothbrushes. Like, we have nothing. We don't have pillows. We don't have, and they had everything set up and it was categorized. And the town just, the volunteers were just amazing. They were absolutely amazing, because they brought us through, you know, and said, oh, do you need this? Do you need that? And
We didn't know what we needed. at
yeah,
that
we
point.
didn't know what we needed because we were in shock. We really were. We were in a state of shock. And we were just kind of going through the motions. We were all trying to figure
Help each
out where
other.
we were going to live.
Yeah.
We had nowhere to live.
Yeah.
The saddest part of it was that we lost our neighborhood.
Yeah.
Fortunately, a lot of us remain friends, and we'll never lose that part of it. We will always be grateful for that buyout. But from a financial standpoint, we then had to use that buyout money to pay off the remaining mortgage, to pay off 2 loans that were taken out to rebuild. And there was barely enough to put a deposit down on a new house. And so at our age, we were then facing another 30-year mortgage, and we were starting all over again. And it's daunting. It's daunting to pick up and start all over again.
Yeah.
I must say that was Senator Menendez and Senator Booker at the time. But we were able to get mortgage forgiveness for those people that were upside down so that they would not have to pay the remaining
because then they
balance
couldn't
of
get
their
out.
mortgage.
Yeah.
Because the value of their home had dropped so much
Right.
that the buyout just didn't cover what their balance
Can you
was.
imagine?
It was a year and a half for me, and maybe even longer for you before you were even in another home.
Yeah.
It went on for a long time.
Now,
Hello, I'm Larry Gates. I used to live on 66 Weber Avenue in Saraville. Still live in Saraville at this present moment. I now presently work in the Saraville school system. The mayor, actually, Mayor Kennedy O'Brien, came to my house a couple of days prior and begged me more or less to not stay, because my role was to protect my home. I sent my children afar, and my wife at that time, she decided to stay with me. I had 2 pumps, I had 2 generators, and I figured I could combat the storm by being there. The mayor wanted me to leave, but the problem was that I didn't want to leave, and he was telling me I was stubborn, which I am. And he wanted me out of there because he said the emergency personnel would not come out during Sandy or after or any time, because he wasn't going to put lives at risk. So he warned me if I did stay that you were going to be trapped and anything happened to you, that you were on your own. So I was warned. Past storms, the water would come slowly through the meadows into the house, and you could watch it creeping in. This one came within 20 minutes. And within 20 minutes, the house was surrounded by water. So we were trapped. We weren't going to we couldn't evacuate. We were going to have to ride it out. When I got upstairs, now the water already was coming in my first floor, which in prior storms, it never got that high. It never got over my deck. It only got, around my foundation. Well, now it's coming in my doors and everything. But what I did prior to that was I had asked a buddy of mine for a boat. He had a blow-up, like 12-foot rubber boat, and I decided that I was going to put it in the backyard. Luckily enough, I tied it to my railing of my deck instead of the fence like I was going to do, because I never would have been able to get to it. And at that point, I was a knock on my front door. Now I'm saying my house is surrounded by water. My neighbor next door to me swam over to my house and was on my front porch. And I go, how'd you get here? He goes, I swam here. I go, why? He says, my house caved in. There's a gas leak. There's gas spewing all over the place. He says, I think the house is going to blow. He dove off my front porch and into the water. And it was dark. And it was like, I didn't see him. So luckily enough, that guy, Dave, called his friend in Staten Island, said that he was stuck, that he needed to get saved. Well, then, luckily enough, the mayor was glad he was wrong. The emergency people, the firemen and everything, they had boats, and they actually came up to save him. Now, Dave didn't know that I was hanging on the side of the house, and they came to get him, and when they did, they saw us. And we were there for, 45 minutes. Wow. And it was quite emotional, for both of us, because we didn't know if we were going to make it. And then the ride from 66 Weber out of that neighborhood was the most amazing or devastating thing I could ever say. That watching all the houses surrounded by water and people as we're going by screaming from their front porch, "Save me, come get me," and they were saying we're full, we already had people on the boat. You know, it's heart-wrenching. Even when I think about it now, you know, you get emotional when you think back of what happened and what you had to go through. I was down the street now, a block away. Somebody called me on the phone and says, "Bon Jovi's here." I dropped everything I was doing and ran up the street. And because it was a refreshing thing that at least somebody came. I mean, later on we had people from Trenton show up and stuff like that. But thank you very much for.
Thank you.
Yeah.
My name is Jen Herrick, and I used to live at 89 Weber Avenue. We were a raised ranch, so we were a good 9 feet higher elevation than our neighbors. So we had already had 2 floods in 36 months prior to Sandy. However, our basement had minimal damage, like we had like about 18 inches of water. So we thought we'd be okay. We just tried to get as much off the floor of our basement and moved our cars and, you know, kind of gathered our lawn furniture and our grills and put it all up on our deck, and sent our 2 little girls to my parents. And we were going to ride it out because we had a generator and we had 2 sump pumps and we had a plan. Everything was fine. We had power till about 6 p.m. You know, it was raining, it was windy. Some pumps were going like they normally did on Weber. And then you could see the river coming up Weber Avenue, which we had also seen before. And within 30 minutes, it was all the way up our lawn, and it was starting to come into our basement windows. Next time we looked down the basement stairs, the water was 2 steps from my kitchen. So that's 10 feet.
Wow.
And I mean, it was less than 30 minutes. And then we're like, we have to leave. We all got to my front porch, and the water was just lapping up to the front porch, and went down our steps into the water like you're walking into a swimming pool. And Tom was at the front, and my husband Steve was at the back, and Michael and Matt and I were in the middle, and we just kind of held hands. And as we walked down our driveway, it got higher and higher. So we stayed as close to the houses as we could. It was up to our chins, and we were like hopping on people's like landscaping, like neighbors had, you know, big decorative rocks or wishing well or whatever, and we could feel it under our feet, and we were just, and there was no light, it was dark, and the wind was howling, it was pouring, and the transformers, I don't know if that's the right word, on the light poles were sparking these green electrical glow, and we were worried that what happens if it falls into the water and we're in the water. And then finally we rounded the curve to, it's at Junker Street.
Right.
And then we got to MacArthur. And we decided to go left towards St. Stan's. And then as we started going up, you're going uphill. And then the you know, it got from our neck to our chest to our waist to our knees. Well, you know, I'm a police officer's daughter. And so something that occurred to me is that I made the choice to stay there, and I didn't want to put anyone else in harm's way to come rescue me when I decided to be stubborn, because we thought that we're just going to have the same experience. And so I was kind of like, I'm not going to ask these people to risk their lives to save me when I made this choice. It's kind of like, yes, I can believe it's 10 years, and it's only 10 years. I can't explain the, I don't know, it feels like yesterday and a lifetime ago. I had my wallet, and I had, but you know, we were lucky that we have family in town in an area that didn't flood. But yeah, the storm started out at OLV, and you know, it was a resource. You didn't, because the internet was down, but word got around that go up to OLV, and then it grew so much that I guess that's the original move to the Gillette. Yeah, I mean, I still have furniture from there. I still have furniture from there because I had no furniture, and people were bringing, you know, no one was, well, not that I saw, no one was being like, oh, here, take these things that no one else wants. These people were donating things that they would want in their home. Household items, food, toys. They had everything. People who want to stay in this town are going to start buying up the houses. Right. So we just started looking. I wasn't in any position to buy a house because we owned a house by, ransacking my kids' college funds and liquidating and borrowing. We were able to get another house because it was kind of clear that those of us who were newer to Weber Avenue, who would also get the buyout, they weren't going to give us what we owed. They had depreciated the houses.
Sure.
So people who lived there for 10, 20, 15, or, people whose mortgages were paid, they would walk away with money. But we walked away with a $70,000 short sale and our credit was destroyed. So we never would have gotten a mortgage if we waited for the buyout. So we had to do it ahead of time while we still had good credit, and then we let them destroy our credit, and I'm still trying to fix that. There was this bill, it was a law in the United States government called the Mortgage Debt Forgiveness Act. And it expired in 2011. So after all was said and done, we had to lobby really, really hard for those of us who didn't get what we owed. And Cory Booker and Bob Menendez and some, other federal senators got 11th hour, like December 11th. I think they were leaving for the year for December 12th. They got the bill reinstated. Town was amazing. It's one of the reasons why we stayed. It was the only thing my kids asked for when we were looking for another house. They said, we just want to stay in Sayreville. And so that's, we honored their wish. I graduated Sayreville High School. My husband graduated Sayreville High School. My father was a Sayreville police officer for 28 years. So, we have an attachment here. And the town certainly didn't disappoint as far as how they cared for us and cared for each other and stuck together. And, I am always will be indebted. I hope in the future that towns, when they're creating their development plans, think about, flood zones and allowing developers to develop land on flood zones, and knowing that this is just going to get worse because the ocean's rising. Global warming is not a myth. It's not a myth. So it's going to get worse. Someone said, "Oh, you bought a house near a pond." I said, "Yeah, it's a pond. It doesn't have a tide, and I am now 75 feet higher above sea level than I was. So I moved uphill."
Hi, I'm Sade Manley. During Superstorm Sandy, I was a resident of Weber Avenue and a supervisor at the local neighborhood Sayreville Wawa on Washington Road, which was also with my home destroyed in the path of Sandy. And as I reflect on it now, I'm reminded that even in these divisive times, there was such a sense of community 10 years ago. Whether it be in preparation, neighbors giving each other advice. And of course, when Sandy came, I remember going into my basement and grabbing my dog, because I had my dog in a cage. In the event that things were, would get really, really bad, I could just grab my dog and go upstairs. But something didn't seem right. It was still early in the rain, but my backyard was flooding. But I didn't think it was going to get in the house as quickly as it did. So I grabbed my dog, and moments after I grabbed my dog and walked the dog upstairs from the basement, I just heard a pop. And it was water just rushing in from a little small window we had in the basement. And within 3 minutes, the entire basement had filled up with water. It was already coming onto the second floor. It would eventually rise above the kitchen counter. So my family and I really were waiting for help from the Sayreville rescuers on the third floor near the most of the bedrooms. We were just left with emptiness, left with the cleanup. And the cleanup was the most inspiring time of Superstorm Sandy because the community really came together. Local churches, our local government eventually kicked in and did a great deal. Charities, the Red Cross, the Sayreville school system. I'm a graduate of class of 2009 in Sayreville, and I remember just receiving so much support from past teachers, teachers I had never even had conversations with. Would end up at my home helping me clean things out and, focus on the next chapter of my life. So I'm forever grateful for the Sayreville community. One of those teachers, Sheila Berman, who works at Sayreville High School, was actually featured on Katie Couric show back in, I want to say 2013, 2014, on a segment called Women Who Should Be Famous, because Sheila Berman, Miss Berman took me in after my house got destroyed. I lived with her for a year. So the sense of community, I will never forget. The sense of people looking out for each other. You cared about your neighbor, even if you hadn't really ever have conversations with your neighbor. You cared about your neighbor, and you wanted them to be okay. And I think we all on Weber Avenue felt the same amount of hurt, and we hurt together. A lot of us rebuilt together. A lot of us moved on with our lives, but that sense of community will stick with me forever. And eventually, the Wawa that was destroyed will be rebuilt around 6-7 months later, and we become an important part of the community. And I think that when that Wawa came back, you felt like Saraville was Saraville again. So I'm forever grateful for the Saraville residents. I'm forever grateful for the community, the schools, the charities, just everybody who was a part of helping me rebuild my life and get to the next point in life and figure everything out, me and my family. I will never forget the support we received after Superstorm Sandy. That's really the biggest memory I have, the love, and I'm still grateful to this day for all that love.
Hi, I'm Marianne Weber, and I'm doing this interview for my granddaughter Zoe. She is 7 years old. Hoping perhaps in 3 to 5 years from now I can tell her about our story of 123 Weber Avenue and Storm Sandy. This is our house being built. Okay, this is the house. We stayed at 123 Weber Avenue and listened as the water went into the basement, and within seconds the water was gone. The water level reached the top of the basement steps and receded. We went to bed and I heard a noise, thinking that public service was fixing the transformers. Little did I know that the noise I heard was the back wall collapsing. Tom went around the back and noticed the damage. A policeman came and told us that the house was not safe and we had to leave. A note went on the front door stating, "Not livable." To my sisters, asked if everything was okay. I said no, and releasing my hand from the doorknob, I turned around and with tears rolling down my face, I said, "I think we're going to lose the house." We left their home and went to the Saraville Senior Center, where we stayed until November 4th. We stayed 2 years at Royal Gardens apartment complex. Even though we were not affected physically injured, and through counseling from a grant from Catholic Charities, I will always remember the path of destruction. I was diagnosed with PTSD. I am forever grateful for my family, friends, parishioners, church staff, and Father Ken, my co-workers, parents from Children's Choice, coming together, whether it be a kind word, meals, clothes, gift cards, doing laundry. I worked for Children's Choice, and 2 parents were given back their tuition because the school was closed for the week. They turned around and gave us their tuition checks. I am grateful for my husband, Tom, for his support, my sister Lorraine and her husband John for their loving support, for a beautiful angel, Renee, for being an angel on my shoulder. Renee was a Down syndrome little girl, and she had passed away September 25th, 2012. Most of all, I love to thank my son, Mike, and his wife, Beth, for giving me a beautiful granddaughter, Zoe, who made a dwelling a home. I would like to thank the Sayreville Historical Society for doing this documentary. You are forever my family.
My name is Richard Bednars. I resided at 85 Weber Avenue. I was a resident, and I was also involved in some of the, organizing of committees. I worked with Father Ryan a bit. We arranged to get a group of kids from Notre Dame to help and do some charitable work, helping out some of the residents clean out their homes. I believe it was the Wednesday, the mayor came around and asked us to, evacuate. So we evacuated. We went first to a motel on Old Bridge Turnpike, and ironically, there was a power outage there, so we had to leave, and we ended up going to my sister's house, my sister-in-law's house in Milltown for a while, and then to my nephew back in Sayreville. So we were nomads for a few days there. Well, we lost our house. That was devastating. I like to say now I don't look in the rearview mirror anymore because there's some memories there that have left permanent scars, but we ended up finally getting on the right side of things. Thank God Governor Christie gave us the buyout. Otherwise, I don't know what would have happened for a lot of the residents. It was just a very devastating emotionally and financially situation. I mean, I worked. Fran O'Connor, God bless her, she was she was the main organizer of all the events. She really took the bull by the horns, got the local leadership involved, and then cascaded that up all the way to Governor Christie.
So 10 years later, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts are, it was heartwarming and encouraging to see the outpouring of real support and love from the community, people you never knew, never met in your life, just people coming to offer to help. It was just amazing. And that's something I will remember always, as well as all my neighbors in Weber Avenue. We were a tremendous family. We bonded together. We got closer than we ever were before. We helped each other out. So we shared the experience together. But again, once is enough.
Okay. My name is George Gavrin. My role at Doran Sandy was I was the first assistant fire chief for the borough of Sayreville and the supervisor for sanitation and public works. At Doran Sandy, we ran multiple emergency response calls, trees down, wires down, cleaning up the debris after the storm was over. My role took over as sanitation. We ran day and night operations, sunrise to sunset really, and that was my life for the past couple of months. Yeah, we sent crews into Weber Avenue because before the storm we asked that residents evacuate. It was going to be that bad, and I was one of them we were going to stay. And a friend of mine called from Virginia Beach, and he said, "I'm telling you to get out." And we took his warning and got out. Some people stayed. Later on in the evening, people were trying to get out. We had to go in with boats and do multiple rescues at that time. We were rescuing all over the borough. Besides Weber Avenue, we were down on Old Route 4. We were on Bamehurst Avenue, places that we never saw a flood before.
Right, right. So did you live on Weber Avenue?
Yes, I lived at 108 Weber Avenue.
Does it seem like 10 years?
Doesn't seem like it. Time goes by so quick anymore. It doesn't seem like it's 10 years already.
My name is Charles Wojtaszek. Everybody calls me Chuck though. I was a fire chief at Sayreville Fire Department during Sandy. Yeah, I was all over town. I was running around, helping with rescues, commanding, fire department, sending guys where to go, who to get out, where to place stuff, so it was best for operations. There was a lot on Weber Avenue, a lot of people on Weber Avenue. We had to pull out by boats. One of the rescues that the guys told me about was somebody was in a pool float, and it was blowing out, and they had to run and get him or in the boat, or out, get off at the boat. and then just the water in town I've never seen in town before. I'm 43 years old, and there was water I've never seen in places that it was never before. Personally, thank goodness I didn't lose anything. I didn't lose my house. I live on Washington Road. The water didn't get to my house. Mentally, it gets in there. You always have the memories. You never forget, the water and the devastation and all people's stuff out at the curb afterwards. And so it's always there, and you're always thinking about it. And and our assistant chief, George Gavin, he lost his house. So that probably a good 2 weeks after, because then once the power started coming back, fire alarms would start going off, the seal alarms would start going off. A couple of houses that got waterlogged, they had electrical issues. So some there's problems with that we had to go check out. So it was a pretty prolonged operation. And then we also had the firehouse open for all the guys and for all the members and all the DPW guys and PCG guys. We were letting them come in, and we had food. Whoever was giving food, we were just cooking for whoever needed it at that point down in MacArthur Avenue, an engine company.
Any thoughts 10 years later, or?
Yep, I sure hope it never happens again. I never want to live through it again. Like I said, the water was the power, and the water was amazing. It was in places in town where I've never seen water get. Miller Marsh, I don't ever remember. I know water would get back, behind the pump station there,
right.
But I don't ever remember water coming up almost, to Aspen behind the restaurant there. There was just water everywhere. And then down in Melrose and Knights End and Old Route 4 and that, there was water all over there. It was just water everywhere.
Right.
Hello, my name is Father Thomas Ryan. As part of, our discussions today and the work in the past, I was a pastor of Our Lady of Victory's Church here in Sayreville. Well, almost 10 years ago now, right? We're talking about an experience that was traumatic, I know, for everyone in town. In our initial discussions before, the hurricane hit, some residents I know asked to park cars up in the upper lot there in Our Lady of Victories. So we most certainly, put the word out, and I know some people did bring their cars up top. But then to see the fact that the roads weren't even passable at that point, you couldn't really get far on Main Street or get far on Washington, even as the lights were out, and I know there were even the trees blocking a number and wires as well. I know I had an opportunity to meet up with Mayor O'Brien at that point, and inviting me to come down as soon as we could to the police department where there was emergency meetings being held. But as a part of our discussions, the biggest need was projected as a distribution and collection site. So I know the Monsignor Dalton Hall was a very familiar fixture here to town. Through the most certainly the proactive work of so many residents here in town, and whether they be official elected leaders or just regular volunteers, so many people came together and really put, the effect of what was happening at that point of Monsignor Dalton Hall. One of the partners to come through was Catholic Charities USA. An introduction that I never planned on making, or never really knew much about, but came to see some of our work and to gain with us some insight along the way. But as the disaster operations continued, I guess a sense of caseworkers, and Catholic Charities had an opportunity to train representatives I know of our local area, and bringing others in as well to begin casework processing, but just a sense of response to needs and being present. I think that's where we had a chance to really be effective. Also to bringing people together. Part of disaster operations is many different partner organizations coming together and giving a location for that to happen, or invitations, and I think that we were pretty key in bringing people together that were great resources of what we needed. But, people that never would have planned on being affected to a type of disaster of this sort, woke up and that was the reality. And I think some of the needs that surfaced, no one really could have planned on or actually said that this was going to be a need specific to us until it actually happened. I know it was quite humbling that, basic needs that we just take for granted, socks and underwear and things like that became a necessary needed item. And I think that's the nature of disaster operations, that it's just so big. Not one person or one organization can handle it. And fortunately, I think we have good relationships with so many different organizations, both here in town and partner organizations. You know, outside that we met, you know, Mennonites and Presbyterian disaster operations and the Red Cross and organizations that maybe weren't familiar in our town prior, but most certainly came in to assist in just giving an opportunity, an invitation, and a place maybe to meet. Since the 10 years, most certainly sharing our experiences, learning from our experiences, and hopefully an invitation and providing opportunities for training and for preparing for what comes next, whether it be here or different parts of the states, and always to be available, I know, to be present.
Okay, so I'm Carrie Kenny. I was raised as Zina, and I grew up in Saraville on Patton Drive. Went all through Saraville Public Schools and graduated in 1989.
I'm Debbie Demore Ludwig. I grew up in Saraville. I grew up on Zaleski Drive. I went all the way through school in Saraville up until 1992 when I graduated. What happened with OLV was interesting because that's how I met you.
Yes.
There was nobody in there.
Right, we just came with some bags. Like, we literally just cleaned out our closets. Oh, I don't wear this coat. Somebody could probably use this.
And I brought diapers. I had this weird feeling that morning, like, oh my God, babies are gonna have diapers, right? I don't know where to go. I decide, because I went to OLV for CCD and everything, so I don't know where to go. So I'm like, just kind of blindly driving. I'm like, I'm gonna go and drop this off at the parish center. I walk in, there's no one in there. And then you came in. That's how I met you.
With my mom. Yeah. And we just started, all of a sudden there were bags and we
getting
were like,
dropped
let's
off.
sort this stuff out.
We're
right?
like, let's fold this, let's sort this, and it was at exactly the same time that things had been getting moved from the senior center.
I think actually in hindsight, I think I reached out to Danny and Lisa Buchanan because one or both of them were on the council at the time. And I was like, what can we do? Where can we go? And I think they told me, try the senior center. And the senior center said, no, but I think there's some people over at Monsignor Dalton Hall. Okay, so we just took our bags, went over, and then like Debbie said, it was, I remember being dark in there, and then us saying, well, if people need this stuff, how are they gonna get at it? So we just started folding, sorting, I don't know, it just happened.
Just the two of
right?
us.
Yeah, just, men's clothes here, women's, children.
Put something out on Facebook, like we need help, fold, if you
Yeah,
want
I think
to
so,
help
if you want to
folding.
help, yeah.
When I pulled up the next morning, I don't remember when you did. When I pulled up the next morning, the parking lot was full. And when I walked in, it was everybody we knew.
Yeah.
It was crazy and really cool.
Yeah, and that's really my memory, is just that, all of a sudden people that you knew, like we didn't know each other in school, but we had gone obviously to the same school, and I saw Chris and other people that I had graduated with, people I've gone to elementary school with.
Sean Fisher.
Sean was there, Mike Romanello, who, people who had coached my kids. Yeah, and it was just like, okay, I knew I loved this town for a reason, right? Like here was everybody pitching in. One other thing that was kind of neat was we did have so many things donated in Saraville that I and a friend of mine, we were able to go over to South Amboy. I teach there. A lot of my students and former students had lost their homes. And we were actually just walking around with a form that somebody had made up, seeing what people needed. And we could knock on their doors and say, if they were even there or where we could find them. Do you need some blankets? Do you need any clothes? What sizes? Can we bring you some food? And that was such a great feeling that I could help, the community where I taught as well.
When Sandy hit, I was working for Catholic Charities as a therapist, and when everything was going on in the storm center, people just needed so much support. And what started to happen as it started to sort of move forward, a lot of people said, I'd like to see you after this is over, because it's been a lot of trauma, and they didn't actually use the word trauma, it's a lot that's happened. And I decided to open this practice.
Even, driving down MacArthur Avenue, and I've not gone on to Weber, we had a close family friend who lived there. They were away at the time. My father went to check on their house, and the front looked fine, walked around to the back, and the entire back was just washed in. You know, the basement, everything was floating, and he had built that home 40 years ago, you know, and it was just so heartbreaking.
I have never seen with my own eyes a more beautiful display of a community coming together, ever. And I don't think I'll ever see anything like that again. It was synergistic, it was simple and beautiful, and if we needed something, especially those first few days, if we needed something, someone will put it up on Facebook. Through the door it came. And people just were pouring in. I mean, all day, every day, pouring in to help, or if they weren't on the helping end, they were on the needing end. And one way or another, everybody got whatever they needed. It was something that was magical. It really was. I've never seen anything more beautiful.
When I think back, I think that I'm grateful to live here. You know, I'm grateful to know that this is a community that really can come together when needed. It's sad that that's when you see, you know, it takes a tragedy sometimes to see the good in people. So I just, you know, try to remember that it really is there in everybody, that good really is there, and that gives me a lot of comfort.
When I look back, I always feel a warmth in my heart because I have never seen a display of humanity like that, ever. It was in the spirit of giving, it was in the spirit of loving, it was in the spirit of kindness. Thanksgiving.
Nice. Oh yes, Thanksgiving.
Karen and Kevin Crimmins, Karen Crimmins did this actually. She
and Carolyn was
and Carolyn did, and Father Ryan was involved in that as well, where Karen spearheaded it, but
Yes.
we made a Thanksgiving for the residents that didn't have anywhere to eat, and it was a huge undertaking. Beautiful. I spent my Thanksgiving there that day, and to me that was like watching it and seeing it was, okay, so this is what Thanksgiving is. Right? And I don't know how she pulled it off, but she pulled it off.
Yeah, that was really great. That was great.
Okay, I'm Sean Fisher.
Hi, Sean.
Hi. Saraville's my hometown, but I moved away. I live in Monroe Township. So during when Sandy hit, I wasn't too badly affected. So then being on social media, on Facebook primarily, one of my classmates I graduated high school with, Matt Barotticelli, I saw him say, hey, can someone give me a hand? Because he lives in Delaware. And at that time when Sandy hit, you couldn't get generators anywhere, in the area. Sold out, could not locate them. He had no problem in Delaware, so what he did, he was taking orders from residents in Saraville who needed generators because he had plenty of access to it. So when he loaded up his trailer, he put it up on Facebook like, hey, I'm delivering these orders. If anyone is in the area, and give me a hand. So I just replied, hey, Matt, that's a great move. I said, I'll definitely sync up with you, and I'll give you a hand unloading the generators for the people who need them. People in the area started bringing donations. They're like, whoa. They're like, hey, families are gonna need items. So Father Ryan graciously opened up the parish center to us and said, hey, use this location. So it just kind of snowballed. And before you know it, donations after donations, no electricity. Even Kevin Crimmins, another friend from high school, he's an electrician, union electrician. He set up a little bit of lighting because we were in complete darkness, and it just grew from there. So ultimately, I became part of this Saraville storm relief team, right. not knowing that it was going to grow, and didn't realize how the people in my hometown were really affected. Yeah, Saraville, no matter what, will always be my hometown.
Right.
And I still have family and friends who live here, so right. It's the right thing to do. But then once I came here into Saraville and realized the severity of family, friends, and just people in the area have been so severely affected, you got to take action, and you just got to roll up your sleeves and and just pitch in it and just do as much as you can. Exactly. So when you hear those stories, and I went to high school with Jen, and when you hear those stories, wow, how does that not change you? How does that not change you? How does that not make you roll up your sleeves and just keep pushing forward and try to give comfort and whatever necessities that someone needs? It just reinforces my belief and others' belief that when a group of people can just come together and not worry about what religion, what race, what political aisle someone falls onto, when you just check all of that to the side, and when you just look at each other and just come together to accomplish, and you're facing adversities, and when you put others in front of what you're going through, that you can conquer, you can achieve, right? So it just reinforces my whole belief. I've always believed that. And it shouldn't have to take a disaster for people to wake up and just understand that we, the people, do have the power to make changes, to make positive impacts, to help, as long as that we just check everything else out. And I have to say, every single volunteer that showed up, whether it was they made a donation, whether they brought food, whether they volunteered a day, an hour, a month, 3 months, 6 months, everyone provided some kind of comfort and was that light that helped so many people go through that darkness. That's a proud moment.
My name's Kevin Crimmins. I was a volunteer during Superstorm Sandy. The story quickly was somebody put something on Facebook at the time that a truckload of generators was being delivered to OLV. And the next day I went there and they didn't have any power. So I helped run some temporary power for them and stuff like that and get them started. And then I believe we were there for maybe a week or so and then moved on to a couple warehouses over off of Cheesequake Road. Right, so after that, it was basically what some of the people that were in charge kind of needed. Hey, can you move this? Can you organize that? Stuff like that. And then the role eventually turned into, we went out and delivered items and materials and whatnot to families. We had at least one box truck, and I remember getting so much, we got so much stuff from at the Gillette warehouse that we had to organize it, and people were coming in and we had to like take their IDs and stuff, and then they're like, well, I can't get this home, can you guys get this to the house? So we would do that. Yeah. Me and Sean Fisher made a couple deliveries together, and well, I haven't seen probably since high school or whatnot, and it was kind of cool getting to see him again. All right, so I could tell you about my wife Karen. She came down and volunteered right away. Also, she actually was she held a pretty important role. They eventually did a Thanksgiving dinner, and she kind of helped organize that entire sort of thing together. She didn't do any of the cooking, but she found the right people, put them in the right places, and did all sorts of stuff. I remember specifically when we were in the middle of it all, that there was certain classes of students, like graduating classes, that seemed to have represented the town in general, and it seemed to be like the class of 91, 89, and 90 maybe, something along those lines. And even the people that weren't able to volunteer all the time, that didn't even live in Sayreville anymore, would show up donating things. They could have lived an hour away. It could have been just a case of water. It could have been blankets. It could have been towels, whatever it was. And they were, it was kind of nice. And it was, made you feel pretty good. Yeah. Was proud of all those guys. Yeah, I'll say it's kind of sad what's happened to Weber Avenue. It's, I understand why people didn't want to rebuild and whatnot, but I don't know, some of those spaces look pretty terrible. I know we're trying to keep it upbeat, but you know what I mean? It's just kind of sad what's happened to that side of town. No, I understand it. I mean, I get it. It's not easy to raise a home, and
Yeah, because
Okay, hi, my name is Camilo. I'm the co-owner of Camilo's Restaurant.
My name is Guven. I'm the co-owner, Camilo's Restaurant.
Were you prepared at all, or?
No, we were not really prepared. They made us evacuate that afternoon. We were not able to come back until the next morning, when we found everything pretty much devastation complete. We were under about 5 feet of water.
Right. Tell me about a business. What resources did you have? I mean,
unfortunately for businesses, they had nothing at all available. So pretty much it was all up to us personal. We were able to use some of our savings. My parents had a home equity line on their house for about $200,000, which we took and used. And that's really pretty much about it, but we weren't able to get anything from the insurance companies. We weren't able to get anything from FEMA. We weren't able to get anything from the government.
No small business loans, no.
Well, they had business loan, but it was like, you know, with interest, like a regular loan.
Higher, yeah. So no bargains there.
No bargains at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, we donated a lot of our food that we had that we were able to salvage.
Right.
That was on the higher shelvings. We donated a lot to the fire department right down the street here on MacArthur Avenue.
Right.
We did some cookouts in the parking lot with the help of some local friends and people from St. Stan's Church.
Right. Churches, businesses, individual
the
people.
community really did come together quite well. I mean, we really, unfortunately, we were all devastated around here, so we all kind of try to help one another as best as we could.
How long was the business closed for?
4 months, exactly 4 months.
4 months.
October 27th, that's when the hurricane, and we reopened it back up February 26th, 25th or 26th.
I mean, I'm not sure, do you live in town? Were you affected other than the business?
I live in town though, but my house was not affected. He actually lived down the shore at the time, and he lost his house at the same time.
Well, that morning, when we came over here, all I had left is
what I had on.
Nothing else.
So you had no business, no house?
I lived in Lavalette. I had no house left. I had no clothing. I had no furniture, nothing. That's just what I had on. One suitcase out of the house. But as soon as I walked in the house, forget about suitcase. I couldn't even fill up a ShopRite bag because everything was destroyed. Especially, you cannot go in there 2 weeks. That all the smell, the sewer system and everything. It was so bad. I walked in there, I came out gagging. We sat in the parking lot outside on the light pole over there. We asked each other that morning, how the hell are we going to do this?
Yeah, no, I bet.
And well, I said we have 7 reasons that we have to do this. He has 4 kids, I have 3 kids.
Right.
We have 7 kids. We have to. We will find a way to do it, and we did it. There was a lot of help from the town. So we said, how the hell are we going to do it?
Complete gut and redo. And we were lucky that his brother is in construction business. So his brother and his crew came down. Then we have another friend of ours that's also from Saraville who had is in the construction business that helped us out.
Well, he's like a family to us.
Sure,
Mr.
sure.
Zollinger lived right back here. He lost his house same time.
No, Mike Zollinger. Yeah, he did some in my driveway. He did the concrete.
And
he came here to help us.
Help us.
Yeah, see, that's
Meanwhile, his house is gone.
No.
He lost his house and he was here helping us trying to get stuff back together.
Yeah, he's offering us, what can I do? What can I help you guys? How could I help you guys? That's the kind of people we had.
The only good thing that came out of that, every once in a while, me and him were able to hang out together and go out. Seriously.
Perfect.
You guys have great attitude, I have to say.
You
have to. If not, you're going to go crazy.
You cannot sit home or stay in a corner and cry about it.
But unfortunately,
you're broken down and tired of living life on the merry-go-round, and you can't find a fighter, but I see it in you, so we gon' walk it out. Move mountains, we gon' walk it out and move mountains. And